As the new year approaches, many people are focused on 2020. However, we decided to take a look back. In a new article out for Politico, Joanna Weiss examines how television shows may have predicted the politics we saw this decade. She reports that, quote, idealism vanished, and that might not be a coincidence. And Joanna joins me now from Boston. She is an editor at Experience Magazine. Thank you so much, Joanna, for being with us. How has politics played out in TV shows since 2010?
Well, you've got to think about the West Wing, which was kind of which I think characterized the aughts on political fictional TV. That ran from about 1999 to 2006, and it was a really optimistic show that it had a liberal bent, but it really assumed that politicians and operatives on both sides were good-natured, were fighting for what they believed in the rules. It was an optimistic show about politics. Once we started into the 2010s, we got House of Cards, we got Veep, these were shows that were just really nakedly cynical and assumed that, in fact, people who were involved in politics were power hungry, they were greedy, they were venal. And then you get a show like Scandal on ABC, which was a soap opera set in Washington, but everyone was awful on Scandal and corrupt, and right. There were no good guys on Scandal. And even some of the shows that seemed to be optimistic about politics, thinking about Madam Secretary and Designated Survivor, which came late in the decade, took a fairly cynical view, kind of seemed to suggest that it took an outsider to come in and fix what was wrong with Washington, which kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. So how much do you think political shows influenced what we've actually experienced this decade?
I mean, it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg. I think a lot of times fictional television reflects what people are thinking and feeling. But I do think that as the Obama era kind of went on, and I think there was a lot of, particularly in liberal Hollywood circles, a lot of hopes and dreams associated with him in the beginning, and thinking that, wow, this new bipartisan era was going to be ushered in, change was going to happen. And when you really think about what happened, there was the same old gridlock in Washington. And I think that made a lot of people very cynical. If this great hope couldn't change Washington, this guy who really kind of was an outsider, maybe Washington itself was what was broken.
Well, how was political television different this decade compared to ones that came before it? You mentioned The West Wing.
The West Wing, again, was just, it was so good-natured and assumed, again, and that people on both sides of the aisle had very strongly differing views, but had the ability to work together and I think fundamentally understood and respected the rules of engagement. There was a really interesting episode that aired in about 2002, and it was a documentary episode. It interspersed clips from the West Wing with interviews with both Democratic and Republican political operatives, even people like Henry Kissinger, Marlon Fitzwater from the Bush era. And they were all talking about the glory of working in the White House, how hard they worked, what an important job it was, what an exciting time it was to be in Washington. And, and again, this deep respect for the system. And I think what you really lose in the 2010s is that sense that the system is worth respecting and that the people, all of the players, are in it for the right reasons.
All right, it'll be fascinating to see what we get in the 2020s. Joanna Weiss for us. Joanna, thank you very much.
Thank you.